Hi there! My name is Sarah Nell Wilson. I'm the owner of Sarah Nell Wilson Incorporated, otherwise known as SNOCO, and we work with leaders through leadership coaching and consulting to help them build, rebuild, and heal teams. But I am not here to talk to you about that. Instead, I want to share my personal journey through the land of mental health. You might look at me, most people hopefully would look at me and see a confident woman who is building a successful company, who has her master's, who has had, 5+ years in the HR world leading leadership development efforts and 10+ years in management and various other roles. You would see somebody who is not uncomfortable at all, in fact, relishes standing in front of audiences of as big as they are or as small as they are. You would see somebody who's happy, who's in a healthy relationship, who for all intents and purposes has a really good life. Here's what you might not realize is that this person is somebody who has struggled for her entire life with sometimes crippling anxiety and was diagnosed with panic disorder. So what you don't realize is the day that I'm filming this is March 3rd. And it was 6 years ago today, actually, and it gets me a little emotional, that I had my first panic attack. And for those of you who have never experienced a panic attack, let me tell you something, they suck. So for those of you who are in the audience who have, I'm so sorry, and I'm so proud of you for getting through it. So a panic attack, the way that it was described to me by a doctor afterwards, is a sense of impending doom. Yep, think about that. But essentially what happens is the brain gets triggered in such a way that it is convinced that it's dying, that you are convinced you are dying. And so 6 years ago today, I had my first episode where I was convinced I was dying. I was rushed to the hospital. I called my husband thinking it was the last time I would ever talk to him, and that if I gave in to passing out, that was it. And after running lots of different tests, the doctors came back and said, well, here's the good news. You're not dying. You just have an overstimulated sympathetic nervous system. To which I said, what does that mean? And they said, you had a panic attack. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I've heard of that. I have had family members who have had that. All right, well, this isn't such a big deal. What happened to me and what happens to a lot of people who experience some type of traumatic mental health episode is that you can fall into this spiral of essentially developing anxiety about having anxiety. So you can imagine, as somebody who makes her living and it's her love to work with people and to help them grow, whether that's teaching a class or coaching, suddenly to have this reality that at any moment she could just lose control and kind of go, like lose her shit, so to speak, and not have control of that was incredibly terrifying. And so what happened over the next 9 to 12 months after that episode is that I started to have repeat panic attacks. And so that's what ultimately led to my panic disorder diagnosis. Now here's the thing. So I was in HR at the time. I knew all about our employee benefits. I had 2 incredible leaders who were the most loving leaders I had ever worked for, but they had no idea for the longest time how much I was suffering. And the reason I didn't tell them is because when you are struggling with mental health, at least in my experience, is you feel broken, you feel an incredible amount of shame because you know it's illogical, the things that are triggering you, but you can't stop it from triggering you, and you just feel weak. And like, who wants to show up and share that with people? And so what they saw was a worker who was exceeding expectations, who was, her perky self, who was creating new programs and things like that. What they didn't see was how many hours I spent staring at the screen with tears rolling down my face, or how many times I had to leave to take a break. And actually what I was doing was calling my husband Nick, because he was the only one who I felt like could help me talk me down when I was having a heightened panic attack or an anxiety attack. And what changed that was my chief HR officer, Erin Barfels, who is one of my favorite people, but it was when she started to open up about her personal struggles with anxiety that I started to open up more about mine, and then I started to become more and more comfortable. So one of the things that I learned from that is that it isn't enough to just have an employee assistance program. It isn't enough to do lunch and learns. We need to understand how to support people, how to make it safe, how to show up when they're having it. You know, for example, you know, when you have panic, some really well-meaning people will say things like, well, don't worry about it. Well, don't panic. It's like, you think I don't know that? Like, that's not helpful. I'm going over my time, so let me get this. I have so much to say on this topic. But here's the thing. This topic matters. It matters more than we realize because people hide it. They hide it because they feel broken, they hide it because they feel shame, and they hide it because they feel weak. But we, as leaders in organizations, especially in HR, we get to change that. And today, I hope that you continue to expand this conversation and find ways to make it safe for people to speak up, to speak out, and to be supported. So with that, that's the end of my time. Thank you for listening to my story, and happy learning. Bye.